to our forum today on this important topic. Eileen?
Thank you, Debbie. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our forum today, Education in the Time of Crisis. Debbie Polshek will be our moderator today, but before I introduce Debbie, I have a couple of announcements to make. Please mark your calendar. November 14th, we will be holding the Make Food Not War virtual dinner. This year we will be doing it virtually because of COVID. This is our annual fundraiser, but just as important, it's an opportunity to recognize people who are trying to improve the lives of our fellow Staten Islanders. So we hope you'll join us, and please stay tuned for more information. The next announcement I have to make is about a climate march on next Sunday, September 20th. It will be taking off at 1 p.m. at Columbus Circle in the city. We will post more information about meeting up. We hope to have a contingent from Staten Island that will be going. And the aim of the march is to show the direct connection between climate and economic and racial justice. So we hope that you will join us. And now to the forum. Education in the time of crisis is our subject today. And in this critical time, it is very easy to understand why parents are so concerned. Hybrid learning is forcing parents to hire babysitters or to leave their children alone. Lack of interaction with peers is causing child isolation. And parents are also concerned about a well-run classroom. The Chancellor is also telling us that the schools are underfunded. So that then makes us ask the question, well, how are you going to provide PPEs? How will we know that we'll have nurses in every school? Sinks that work, proper cleaning. Today, we have assembled a panel of parents, teachers from elementary through university, and community leaders who will address these issues and hopefully give us some insight and direct us towards a way that we can work together to serve our children. So at this time, I'd like to introduce Debbie Polshek, a board member of Peace Action of Staten Island, and she will be moderating the forum. Debbie?
In July, when I thought about the forum, I hoped it would provide an opportunity for the community to receive information and to discuss their concerns about the Department of Education's and the teachers' union's response to developing a plan to reopen the schools in the midst of COVID-19. I'm a retired teacher. I was a teacher for 34 years in the Department of Education, and I was a chapter leader for many years at my school, PS 18 in Staten Island. And in those two roles, I've always fought against an underfunded and racially inequitable educational system. But the problems of reopening the schools on all levels have affected me personally. My youngest grandson attends preschool. Should he attend school and risk infecting his caretaker grandparents and himself? Will he and others his age ever regain the loss of education for socialization skills and the precursors of academic skills? His parents are both teachers in the New York City schools and fear for their own and their family members' health and the health of their students. My older grandson is entering high school this year with a problematic start to his secondary education. My son teaches at SUNY Purchase, and Oneonta has already been closed due to COVID infection. I hope the forum speakers today will address the problems and concerns about the present underfunded and racist educational system, dealing with school reopening in the time of COVID. We have speakers here from all levels of the educational system with us today. And I want to thank the groups that hosted this presentation today. It was very impressive to me that groups in Staten Island could get together and try to join. And I hope this is a beginning to continue fighting about these issues for our students. So I thought we could begin with a speaker from elementary school, but we're going to begin with a speaker, Yasmin Chokrain, who's been very active in organizing in high schools due to time constraints. So if Yasmin could start, that would be great.
Hi, yes, my name is Yasmin. I attend Stuyvesant High School, but I live on Staten Island, which means that commuting has been kind of a nightmare, especially during COVID. But along with being a senior at Stuyvesant High School, I'm also a student leader at Teens Take Charge, which is a student activist group that is working towards educational equity and integration in schools. Teens Take Charge has been active for many years. It's been student founded and led. Teens Take Charge has taken on many, many causes, especially during COVID, one of which most notable is Save SYEP, Summer Youth Employment Program, in which Teens Take Charge acknowledged the almost discriminatory / difficult nature of SYEP and what it meant that students no longer had access to it, especially in the summer and especially in an economic crisis. But during coronavirus, despite the fact that there are multiple causes that have been Teens Take Charge has worked to address, including schools unscreened and enrollment equity, the one that has rised and kind of taken the forefront of Teens Take Charge, at least since last June, is repeal Hex Calandra. Since this June, especially with the rise of the Black Lives Matter movement, Teens Take Charge has begun to discuss how Black Lives Matter, both in matters of the prison system, but also in the classroom. And in regards to the classroom and also the histories that we learn in it, we have to consider the way that we hold our own histories accountable. And Hex Calandra is a 1971 act that mandates the use of the specialized high school exam. The specialized high school exam is one of great contention, especially in the time of especially now, considering very much the tensions that have arisen. And what this has meant for the coronavirus is we've now been able to interrogate the disproportionate impact on communities of color and also the disproportionate impact of students of color. Is a disproportionate impact that has been seen in the past decades, especially in specialized high schools. Because despite the nearly 2/3, 70% Black and Latinx population in New York City, they make up nearly 10% of the specialized high school systems. And so Teens Take Charge, with everything that's going on in the coronavirus, with the crisis in both education, that ends the crisis in just living in this very, very difficult time, one of the very, very important discussions that we're working to have, just in terms of the social front and also in terms of the legislative front, is repeal Hex Calandra. Repeal Hex Calandra, as well as the other causes this Teens Take Charge is taking the forefront on, is going to continue to be one of contention. And as we continue, specialized high schools is a particular system, not just from Staten Island, but also just the entirety of New York City. It refers to the 8 specialized high schools, well, including LaGuardia, which has an audition process, but the specialized high school exam, which requires students to take a very specific kind of targeted exam that often disproportionately impacts Black and Latinx students, but it seems to prize Asian and the white population. It has a racist history. If you'd like to learn more about that history, please go to teenstakecharge.com/repeal, in which you can learn about the very, very difficult and often saddening history of this test, and also its very, very stark impacts. In an effort to be anti-racist, both in all aspects of our lives, Teens Take Charge has taken the legislative front on this. But the specialized high school exam is very specific to New York City as a whole. It's unique in its structure, at least in regards to the United States. I mean, as far as we know, it's the only system that exists like this. But it's very, very we understand that there are multiple causes that need to be addressed in this time. This is the one that's taken that's been taken on, especially in a time of coronavirus. But if you'd like to learn more about Teens Take Charge and any of our initiatives, please go to teenstakeCharge.com, in which you can learn more.
Thank you so much for your presentation. There were a few questions for you, and but I don't know, how should I handle that? Perhaps we'll deal with them at the end of the recording, because we were going to have the questioning period come after all the panelists speak. So you can enter your questions for Yasmin into the chat, and or questions for any person can be entered into the chat, and I'll call on each person to ask their question at the end. Please try to hold it to a minute or less. At the end, each panelist will get a chance to make a short summation. Okay, let's go to the next speaker. Our next speaker is Naila Bourne. She's she's a very close friend of mine. She was my student teacher, so I take great pride in her ability to discuss what's going on in the schools, at least on the elementary school level. And since we were both speech language teachers, to discuss some of the problems of special education. So.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Naila Bourne, as Debbie said. I work as a speech and language pathologist inside of PS18 Elementary School in West Brighton. So I guess, it is a concern to all of us, especially as teachers. I know I have a few questions here that was given to us as panelists just to kind of focus in on. And some of the questions are just how social distancing is going to be used in large classrooms, what to do with rooms with no sinks, how are temperature checks going to be indicators of COVID-19, and who's going to be monitoring the schools and so forth. Some of the things that our school has taken on, one of the things is, I actually saw one of the classroom setups is that what they're doing is they have classes. Our school actually, I know that they had reported that there were probably 80% of the students that are going to be attending school in New York City. However, our school actually has much less that have decided to attend through a blended learning program. So that's really what is the choice right now. The choice is the students and parents can opt to have a blended learning program, which means that the students will be coming in some days, and then some days they'll be remote learning. There is no student in our school, at least, that has decided to, our school has not decided to have students come in 5 days a week. So every student comes in at the maximum of, in our school, 2 days a week. However, every school has a different system that they put in place. So every school was given an option as to what program they wanted to adapt, and they could adapt their program according to their school or what they felt was good for their parents and what would be most beneficial towards their parents and their students. So our school adopted a blended, we have our blended program, which is 2 days a week the students come in, and 2 days a week they have, 3 days a week they have virtual learning. We actually have students, and every day, like parents are deciding, they have up until the first day of school, which is currently September 21st, to decide to go into blended learning or remote learning. And we have changes every single day because of the concerns that parents have, that everyone has about the safety of the children. We started out, I think, at 80%, but we've gone down much more. I'm not quite sure what the percentages that are going to do blended learning, but now they've actually gone down to probably closer to half the school is going to be doing blending and half of them are going to be doing completely remote learning, which means that everyone will be, the remote learning would be, all their learning would be over a computer. And it is definitely something that is concerning as far as, especially in elementary school. I mean, elementary school is the time where children are learning to socialize. They're learning through socialization and through play and through interactions with other students, especially, you know, as we see in speech pathology. That's one of the things that, you know, it's one of the milestones for kids is how they interact with other students. So it is definitely difficult to think of just having a totally remote learning, you know. However, it's like you have to think of the safety of students, the safety of the teachers as well, because we do have a lot of teachers that are older, the safety of students who, like Debbie's family, they have grandparents that are watching them, which we have a lot of our students, they have their grandparents and older adults that are their caretakers. So it's like trying to navigate and make the balance between having, you know, this ability to interact with other students and still keep ours all safe. I mean, there's a lot of different issues. This is such a complex subject because it is so unknown and it's such a new terrain for everyone, you know. And you know, it's like, I think like our really largest problem, or, you know, our biggest struggle is really the communication, is being able to communicate, you know, and having parents communicate to the school district, having teachers having that say, so they can tell you, you know, because everybody speaks from their experience. So being able to speak from your experience and being able to express that is really important. And you know, having that ability to do that really will help us a lot. That's the real thing that I think that we're confronting, is having the communication between us, students, parents, staff, and the actual DOE, which are the ones who are basically making all the decisions. So, you know, we're working every day on all these questions and all these things that are happening. And thus far, you know, where, you know, as far as safety is concerned, we have classrooms that have only 9 students, where we actually have a school that doesn't have a lot of students that are coming in. So we have classrooms that have 9 students. They have actually 9 desks. So 1 student at each desk. And what happens is, even though there's only 1 student at each desk, the student that comes in on the alternate day does not sit in the same space. Everybody has their own chair. So they all go to their own desk when they come in. So if it's a large desk, then the students will be across from each other. They wouldn't be sitting in the same seat or even next to each other. So that's one of the ways, but we were fortunate enough to have a school that doesn't have that many kids that have opted to come back. So we have the option to do that. Unfortunately, I'm sure if there are students or schools that don't have that option, where a lot of the parents have to send their kids back for the blended learning, it poses a bigger problem. And it also poses a problem because the students who are getting the remote learning are not getting having the same teachers as the teachers that are blended. So we have to have double the amount of teachers that are participating in learning, which means that, you know, there's a teacher shortage, and we've been reaching out to teachers who I know that have that are substitutes and things like that to kind of help out with this remote learning. And that's basically where it is. And it's unfortunate that I feel like, you know, with all this whole speech that I've given, you know, it is still not clear. And I feel like we're constantly working through it. But if anybody has any questions specifically, I'll definitely answer them. I know that somebody put a question about equity. I know in our school, we're treating it as our school system as our school day as a regular school day, which means that all the things that they've implemented for equity as far as my school is concerned that I can speak for are still in play. So they've ordered all new books that reflect the students in my school, which are majority students of color. So they've changed their book selection. So they're still working the same, you know, they're still improving the curriculum as far as equity is concerned by doing things like that and actually focusing on, you know, students, individual students and their how they view themselves, how they identify themselves. So I know that's still happening. And any other questions? I guess I'll pass it on to the next person who's speaking. And, you know, if you have any questions, I'll be definitely willing to answer.
Well, I'm concerned about what is equity when you have.
How do I stop them? Questions are. Questions will be at the end for our speakers, okay?
Please enter them into the chat.
Please enter them into the chat. Rasan, our next speaker is going to be Rasan Williams, and she's a New York City Department of Education high school teacher, and she's a parent. And she's going to talk about the connections, the history of the school system as being racist and unequal, and how that past history of, you know, past inequity, capitalism has resulted in the disastrous situation that we're in today. Okay.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rasan Robinson. I've been teaching at the John Jay campus for 15 years. We're located in Park Slope, Brooklyn. I'm part of District 15. Park Slope is a mostly white, wealthy neighborhood in Brooklyn. However, our students are not that. As a school, we have spearheaded the integration movement in our district. We have been a part of many fightbacks against metal detectors, racist treatment our students face in the neighborhood, police harassment, and police murder. I'm also the parent of a first grader, Violet. Thank you for having me. Sadly, the reopening of schools is a lose-lose situation for our students and their families. We know that opening schools with few safety resources and protocols will prove deadly to workers and students. I think we're all familiar with the issues here. The difficulty of asking young people to social distance, unreliable temperature checks, lack of PPEs, and our inability to trust that politicians will choose workers' interest over profits. But remote learning has its own dangers, especially for those that cannot afford to have an adult in the home every day, not to mention the added trauma for students in temporary housing or shelters. The real collaboration, social interaction, and hands-on learning that students need are non-existent during remote learning. We cannot simply reflexively accept the disastrous and racist choice to have young minds rot at home. Remote learning runs the risk of piling on another layer of normalized neglect to the already callous and racist culture of capitalist schooling. Black, Latin, and immigrant working class students face the brunt of this attack. Whether it's due to limited, inconsistent, or lack of computer and internet access, the need to work to support their families, or they are in a home with no quiet space to do schoolwork. Assuming students have the personal organization and technological skills to learn remotely, this extensive screen time is linked to altered sleep cycles and affects students' physical and mental health. Not to mention how profoundly isolating the experience is for developing minds and bodies. So lives are not expendable, but neither are minds. So I'm not going to be entering in the debate on whether we should start remotely or start in school buildings. That's a lose-lose. Capitalists hold state power for now. They will reopen their schools sooner or later. Vaccination, once safe and effective, will reduce but not eliminate risk. There is no possibility of returning to safe schools. Poor ventilation, budget cuts, and massive layoffs that hurt working class schools the hardest. Inadequate disinfection and insufficient physical distancing and PPE measures all mean no safe schools. The families who need schools the most will send their kids in first. And they love their kids, no less than anyone else. More than learning, schools provide health services, lunch, physical therapy, language counseling, and other related services. Calling to keep schools closed until they're safe, without recognizing this reality, and without genuine planning for student needs, undermines the cause of building parent, student, teacher unity. So the question that was posed to me: how can concerned parents and teachers continue to fight for an equitable education for all students? We know that the working class is full of fighters, and to ensure an equitable education for all students, we need parent, student, teacher solidarity. We cannot accept that COVID-19 will result in a lost generation. In the spring, when we first started remote learning, our PTA formed our own mutual aid group, collecting money to help pay families' rent, provide food, PPEs, and needed counseling. Teachers delivered books to students who couldn't access them online and called to check in on families regularly. After George Floyd was murdered by police, we used Zoom to hold discussion, we call them circles, with our parents and help lead anti-racist lessons for every student in our school. We then hit the streets, attending several rallies and protests together during the uprisings. We also wrote letters demanding the metal detectors be removed from our buildings as the first step to a police-free school. A call we have been making, sadly, for at least 15 years. We were able to do this as a school family because we spent a lot of time building parent, student, teacher solidarity in our classrooms, PTA meetings, SLTs, barbecues, picnics, and assemblies. We have also made sure that that solidarity is one based on fight back, whether it was holding community speak outs when our students were chased out of the neighborhood by police, saying they don't belong here, rallies in front of the school building to protest budget cuts, or facilitating circles between school safety agents from Brooklyn Tech and our students when our volleyball team were made to feel like criminals after a game. The DOE has asked every school to have a COVID response team. Where possible, we should demand to be on those teams and fight to have that response not only be about safety, but about responding to families' needs. We should then bring in our churches, community organizations, or any formations we're in to be a part of that response. And as teachers, whether remote or in person, we must make shifts in our curriculum to use math, science, history, and language to explore how COVID-19 reveals the nature of capitalist inequality and invite our students to help create solutions. We know that a better world is possible, and we also know that we can't depend on the bosses to bring us to that world. We need the power of the entire working class to do that. I look forward to answering any questions.
Okay, that was wonderful, Rasan, and it's very inspiring, the things that you talked about doing in your school, and I think they could be a model for other schools also. So thank you very much. Now we're going to have Leonie Hampson speak, who's the founder of Class Size Matter. Leonie, stop it. Okay,
Yes.
so if you could speak, that would be great.
Well, thank you for inviting me to speak again. I'm a longtime education advocate, founder of Class Size Matters, also co-chair of a national organization called the Parent Coalition for Student Privacy. And I'm one of the plaintiffs in an education funding lawsuit, New Yorkers for Students' Educational Rights. The problems of reopening schools in New York City to in-person learning are myriad, but the fact is they're severely exacerbated exacerbated by the lack of resources and the chronic overcrowding in our public schools. Last year, more than 500,000 students attended schools that were overcrowded, according to DOE's own statistics. More than 275,000 kids were in classes of 30 or more. Our class sizes are 15 to 30% higher in New York City on average than schools in the rest of the state. Many of our buildings are old and in a chronic state of disrepair. Our schools are also suffering this year from budget cuts and a staffing freeze. That lack of space and lack of staffing makes a sane, rational, safe reopening plan much harder to achieve because of the need for social distancing, as many people have mentioned before. For many of our students, what that means is even if they opt for hybrid learning, they will have less time in school, in-person classes, and more time online, which research shows will further widen the inequities and the achievement opportunity gap. Few kids do well in online learning, but the ones who do worst are the ones who are most disadvantaged and or have special needs. Most New York City students will be able to attend school only 1 to 3 days per week. Even so, many will be on computers when they are in school. When they're on computers, part-time and hybrid learning, the DOE has said that the contractual class size limits for teachers can double to 64 to 68 students per class, which in itself is a disaster. We don't have a lot of research showing what works and what doesn't work with online learning, but what teachers tell us is that class sizes have to be especially small when kids are online to keep them engaged, motivated, and to enable enough feedback to be given those kids. But because New York City has a staffing freeze, many schools are actually accessing teachers, meaning they're letting teachers go because of this. And at the same time, they're asking DOE to send them more teachers, but so far they haven't gotten any. The staffing shortages are also worsened by the number of teachers who have health waivers, are retiring, or choosing to take family leaves at this time. Meanwhile, well-funded schools in the suburbs and private schools are finding it much easier to deliver in-person learning. They have smaller classes to begin with, less overcrowding. Mostly, they have more outdoor space and more funding to provide the health and safety protocols required. One example is a private school in Brooklyn named Poly Prep, which is a private school which costs more than $50,000 to attend. It's already open for in-person learning on September 8th. They put up 70 tents across their spacious grounds, and class sizes are 12 students per class. The school requires a negative test for everyone returning to school, and an anonymous donor is paying for costs of regular on-campus testing for faculty and students. These sorts of inequities that we are experiencing here in New York City reflect a national pattern. Studies show that districts where the vast majority of students are white are more than 3 times as likely to be open for at least part-time in-person learning compared to districts that enroll mostly students of color. Now, part of the reason for that is also probably that Black and brown families were more likely to be hit hard by COVID in terms of infection rates, serious illnesses, and even death. So many of these families are understandably reluctant to return to in-person learning and risk transmission again. But part of it also relates to lack of resources. Studies show that 41% of the highest poverty districts are beginning the year with all remote learning, while 50% of the public school districts across the country are planning on full-time in-person learning. Yet, as I mentioned earlier, students of color and those in poverty are the most likely to fall between the cracks and fall behind academically when doing online learning, even when they have equal and adequate access to devices and the internet. This is another aspect of the digital divide that's too rarely mentioned. Meanwhile, we hear reports that some parents with the financial means are moving to the suburbs to be able to take advantage of schools that have a more reliable, steady in-person learning plan, or transferring their kids to private schools, which are seeing their application pool grow. Others are hiring private tutors for their kids or establishing pods with other parents. where they are going to either share duties or hire a teacher to supervise their kids and keep them on track academically. Even as the pandemic has put a spotlight on these inequitable conditions, it's also likely to worsen these inequities as the political support for vouchers and privatization seems to be growing. Next week, the US Senate is due to pass a COVID relief bill that would provide some desperately needed funds for public schools, but would also allocate $5 billion for vouchers in the form of tax credits for donations to scholarship programs for private and religious schools. And whether this particular provision becomes law, many people fear that the political support for public schools will continue to be eroded as long as they stay closed to in-person learning, and the support for vouchers and more subsidies to private schools will likely strengthen. Johan Neem, a professor of history at Western Washington University, wrote a very scary op-ed for USA Today that I highly recommend. It's entitled, "Does the COVID Pandemic Spell the End of Public Schools?" It starts off this way. We might be entering the last days of public education in America. The US, which led the world in expanding access to public schools to boys and girls in the 1800s, is poised to become the first rich nation to abandon that commitment as long-standing political efforts to undermine public schools meet the existential threat posed by the coronavirus. As privileged parents determine what to do if schools are closed or online this fall, their individual choices could, in the aggregate, presage a shift away from public education and back to the market-based private education that predated it. So that's my presentation, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that you might have at the end of this session.
I just want to thank you so much for your presentation, Leonie. It was just so full of facts and information, and and it integrated our concerns for the continuation of public education, and how the rulers of our country can use this situation to destroy, as an excuse to destroy public education rather than improving it. So I really want to thank you. It was just an amazing presentation. Now we're going to have Tammy Greer-Brown speak to us. She is the student leader. She is the youth council advisor for the NAACP, and she led a struggle at New Dorp High School against a racist AP. So maybe she can talk about racism and how it's integrated with the threat of COVID-19 and the reopening of schools.
Hi, thank you, Deborah. I just want to correct you. I've never led. My name is Tammy Greer-Brown. I am the youth advisor for the Staten Island NAACP Youth Council.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry.
I did not lead a struggle against an AP. I was actually part of a group called the Equity Alliance of Staten Island.
Okay.
We came together because we felt that the disparaging rhetoric that this AP from New Dorp High School put on social media was a direct conflict of her duties as to be an impartial educator for all students. So therefore, we came together collectively. We wrote a letter. We had a press conference, and we continue to fight the good fight when it comes to equity on Staten Island within public schools. I'm going to give you a little bit of what I know and what I know in terms of what we have done in terms of the Staten Island NAACP Youth Council when it came to COVID, as well as the partners that we had. And I wrote some notes just to make sure I stay on point. COVID-19 hit us tremendously. And it wasn't just public schools that were affected by it. It was pre-K through college, because some of the students that we have and some of the youth that we have that are part of the Staten Island NAACP Youth Council are also college students from various areas throughout the United States, including SUNY schools, CUNY schools, excuse me, schools from out of state, as far as Virginia, as far as New Orleans, as far as Washington, D.C. And the problem that we had immediately once COVID, once COVID became a pandemic, is that the amount of work that a lot of these students got from pre-K on up was tremendous. And it was overwhelming. Not only was it overwhelming, it was also difficult to actually navigate some of the material that was given to the students. Could you hold on 1 second? I'm sorry. Hi, and so basically, I'm sorry, my daughter is also studying because she's remotely learning. she's a student, sophomore at Howard University, and they are they're putting the pedal to the metal with her when it comes to her schoolwork. But to get back to what I was saying, the amount of work that was getting to these kids was tremendously overwhelming. We would start to get so many people, parents and students, and calling me, calling other students, and calling our state regarding the amount of work that they were getting and no support at all during COVID. It's one thing to be a college student, you're expected to kind of land on your feet. But when you are a pre-K student or a junior high school student or a high school student, and the work that you're doing in the classroom varies differently than what you're doing outside of the classroom, it becomes kind of like a do or die situation. Because of COVID, there was no access to having someone to help you with after school work. There was no access to resources that you're able to get when you're in the classroom or be able to be referred to other people. Therefore, a lot of families, and especially a lot of parents, were on their own trying to figure things out. We have had parents call us, and I've had members of various various schools call us, telling us that there were parents who did not get the appropriate software and hardware to even do the online work, especially in foster care and especially in homeless shelters. That's where we saw the biggest problem of anything was in the homeless shelters and foster care. And there were times when there was just not even internet service at some of these places, where parents would be chastised and also penalized, and police officers would go to the home and knock on the doors and threaten to arrest parents because their children weren't able to log on. So these are some of the things that you definitely will not find in predominantly white households, that you would find in households that are poverty-stricken, that are Black and Latino, that may be an ELL home or an immigrant home, where the access to this information or just these resources is fair. Not to mention the lack of PPE that some of these kids were not able to have access to due to funding and due to the opportunity of their parents being able to go out to work to create some kind of income and some kind of money to be able to buy these things. So these are the things that we have been experiencing. So far, I'm hoping, based on what I'm seeing, what I'm hearing, that it will be different in the new regime when it comes to the public school system in New York City. But I'm pretty sure that it'll be similar to what we have had in the past, is the lack of resources. And with Title I funding, although Title I funding from last year has, at least in New York State, I can't speak for anywhere else, has been rolled over into this year, those funds, even though they're for parent involvement or other necessities of the schools, are going to be more scrutinized, and probably they need to be a little bit more lax in order to help those parents who are at school. Because generally, when you have Title I funding, you can only use it while you're on the campus of the school. There has to be something that they're going to do to help and allow parents to be able to use some of those fundings in order to be able to support their child at home. That is one of the things we're definitely going to bring up in the Equity Alliance of Staten Island, and something that I'm sure that many of the parents who are part of our parent engagement community within New York, with the Staten Island NAACP Council, are concerned about as well. We're hoping that, one of the things I really wanted to mention, when we talk about COVID numbers, on Staten Island, the 10314 zip code has the highest number, has had historically the highest number of COVID cases that have been reported. However, the top three are all, the second highest numbers are all on the North Shore, where the majority of the students who are Black and brown come from the North Shore. So when you have already the sensitivity of communities of color that are poverty-stricken, in the highest poverty-stricken areas within the city of New York, in the areas where there has been high concentrations of COVID. So we are talking about not only the having the more vulnerability to getting COVID, but also the lack of PPE and the lack of resources in order to protect themselves from COVID. I'm really concerned, how are we going to do this going forward? This is something I'm really looking forward to talking about and bringing back to all of my colleagues at EASY, as well as the parents and the students of the Staten Island NAACP Council. And I want to say one thing, particularly in the 10301, 10304, and 10302 zip codes, which has the second highest rate of COVID here on Staten Island. In these areas, 30% of the population is poverty-stricken, and the majority of those poverty-stricken communities are communities of color. If communities of color are in poverty-stricken communities, have access to the appropriate educational tools to be able to have their children have access to all areas of resources when it comes to education, this could possibly work, but that's just me being thinking in a utopia type logic. The reality is it's going to be hard. I don't think the parents have really been involved in how this is going to pan out for them. I think that is something that not only the UFT, but the DOE need to really work on. And in addition to that, I really think that one of the things that is important is that teachers not just give the work to students expecting them to do it because their parents are at home. They have to really be engaged with the students who are coming from poverty-stricken areas. That is what the Title I money is for parents and students who do not have the educational or financial means to be able to help their students. If this is going to work, you're going to have to include the parents in the decision making. And I think that's it. Should I say more, or is that good enough? I could say more.
Thank you so much. That was really, you gave us a lot of insight into how COVID has affected Staten Island, and I particularly liked your input about remote learning and the stresses that remote learning puts on parents and students to accomplish those tasks. Because even though the teachers may feel that they're doing the best they can for the students by trying to make up for the work that they've missed in class, without that support being there, it's very difficult. Without that teacher support being there, it's very difficult for the students, and it's very frustrating for them. So I truly appreciate what you're saying.
Thank you, Deborah. And just let me add one thing.
Okay.
Because of the Title I funding, some schools get tens of thousands of dollars in Title I funding. There needs to be some kind of amendment to the laws to be able to use that money remotely with the parents. I think that is something that is really, really critical that needs to happen.
Yeah. Okay, we're gonna thank you so much, Tammy, and we're gonna go to college level now, and John Lawrence, who has been very active with Peace Action in the past. He's also very active with the Teachers Union for university students, for university professors, the PSC. So he's going to do a presentation on college level problems. I'm sure a lot of people are aware of what happened in that Oneonta's been closed. And, you know, I'm sure he's very concerned about that. So, John?
Hi. So my name is John. I'm a professor of psychology at the College of Staten Island, and I'm the grievance counselor at CSI for my union, which is called the Professional Staff Congress, and we represent the professors and the professional staff at CUNY. So CUNY, we teach about 30,000 students. CUNY plays a very important role in New York and across the United States. We're the leading institution in helping working class kids, often first generation immigrant families, and mostly students of color, move from the working class to the middle class. I think most of our students, their families make less than $40,000 a year. Like the other speakers, CUNY suffered some serious cuts. So 2/3 of our class are taught by adjunct professors, which are part-time professors. And we've had 3,000 adjunct professors laid off, which is devastating for them, not only because they've lost their income, but they've also lost access to health insurance. Like at the elementary and high school levels, our class sizes have increased, and this semester we're teaching just online. Our union's been fighting against these changes, and we're very concerned about the desire to restructure education across all levels, and in particular at the university level. So right at the start of COVID, I don't know if you noticed this, but Governor Cuomo got together with some executives from Google and Apple and was saying, oh, this is going to be a great time for us to move education into the 21st century. And we don't need to have any more, these brick and mortar schools anymore. And we're going to start this new initiative to, digitize education. So this is a direct threat to all of us in education, and we're fighting against that. I'd briefly like to talk about the political, the politics of education. So we need to be fighting for education at all levels, both at the school level, fighting for health and safety at the state level and at the federal level. And disaster capitalism is the idea that the ruling class uses disasters like this as an opportunity to basically move money and power from working people to the ruling class, to the rich. And that's what's happened now, and it's going on currently. And it was probably the biggest incidence of that was the passing of the CARES Act at the federal level. The CARES Act standard for Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Securities Act. The positive thing it did is it helped some working class people with unemployment insurance, but 90% of the bill was basically aid to capitalists. So it took $500 billion and gave that to the Federal Reserve, and the Federal Reserve has leveraged that money to $5 trillion, and now is giving direct grants and loans to corporations and to banks. Basically, this is the first time since the 1930s the Federal Reserve is giving money directly to corporations. And so this is why you see this huge disconnect between how poorly the economy is doing and how great Wall Street is doing. So we've seen this stock boom because the federal government has basically told international investors, we're going to subsidize your investments and make sure that they don't fall throughout this coronavirus. So while we see these, people having to wait in lines for food, people not getting enough PPE, where the US government is being used to subsidize the very wealthy. And so as progressives, we're going to have to come together around a progressive program and kind of put forth, the opposite of disaster capitalism. We need something, a people's bailout, basically. We're going to have to, so there's basically two priorities for progressives moving forward. One, we have to get Trump out of office. With that, if Trump stays in office, he will try to basically privatize education in the next 4 years. And then second, if we do get Trump out of office, we're going to need to fight like hell to make sure that the future bailouts are geared towards ordinary people. And we're going to need basically a World War II like investment, structured around the Green Deal, in which there's a massive investment in working people, which includes investing in education for us to, basically move forward and for regular people to have decent lives. And a big problem with the left is we're so fractured and it makes sense we're so focused on our just surviving that we don't come together and unite around big goals. And we're going to have to do that in this case to save education, to save healthcare, and to move towards the type of society that we want.
Thank you, John. I just want to thank you. You gave us a lot of information about the connection between the economy and the stock market and how it's impacting on CUNY. And I think you've also brought up an important question about how are we going to achieve parent, student, teacher unity so that we can have a unified front to improve to fight for the things that are important to working people: education, against police brutality, all those important issues that existed before COVID and are very apparent during this period. So thank you very much. And now we're going to have Margarita Sanchez speak to us. She also is a college professor at Wagner, and she's also been involved in fighting for immigrant rights on Staten Island. So if Margarita, hi.
Yeah, hi all. As Mary says, my name is Margarita Sanchez. I have been working at Wagner for many years, and I started working in the Port Richmond community in Staten Island like 10 years ago, mostly providing resources for the immigrant community through my students so that they could serve the immigrant community as a requirement, as a civic engagement component of the college. And I am also part of the board of the organization La Colmena, which serves mostly the Central American community. So I'll tell you a few things about my experience with both hats. The first one is that I'm speaking from a position of privilege because I do work in a private college. That doesn't mean that we have everything ensured. I think that if we don't survive in presence this semester, it's going to be very difficult to survive as a college. We lost millions of dollars because of students that are not living on campus, and also because of students that are not taking the semester, the first year students and others. As a professor, teaching in person has been challenging in different ways. First, with the technology, I also see colleagues that have no clue how to deal with technology, and I see them like zombies around campus, not, you know, completely lost, not knowing how to do a class with students in presence and at the same time students online. For me, it has also been difficult to pay attention to the students that are in the classroom and looking at the ones that are online, understanding that some of them, as you have all mentioned, and thank you for all of this information, and make sure that I include some of your comments and readings in my classes, so that my students are very well aware of what is going on and the inequalities. But some of them are taking classes from their households with a lot of interruptions because they live in crowded environments. Sometimes they are not aware of the difference between being in the classroom and being at home for good reasons. So some of them, you know, I sometimes only see the front head, or I see mothers interrupting students in classes and things like that, which is going to take a while. I've been trying to be as flexible as I can be in the classroom and with my students, and also trying to find strategies to still help the community of immigrants in Staten Island. One of the first programs that was forgotten, or not completely forgotten, but put in pause, is the civic engagement aspect of the college, because we don't have the resources, and we cannot use the human resources in the same way as we used to, because we can't send students to the community. However, this semester I have decided to create a mentorship program for maybe a group of at least 10 children from Central America that need help with their homework. So each one of my students is devoting 1 hour per week to working with these children with the homework, with helping with reading skills and things like that. I have spoken to some of mostly women in the community that feel very anxious about their circumstances that they will have to confront. They have received information from elementary and high schools in Spanish, but they're not completely understanding the circumstances under which they will have to work with their students. Many of them will have to leave their children by themselves taking the classes, because there is no other way. They have to go out and work, and that is going to affect them and the child in big ways. Of course, there is also the language barrier, the fact that many of them are not able to constantly communicate with the school. I myself confront that in the classroom, because I teach classes in Spanish with a mask, and my students are also wearing a mask. So very often I don't understand what they're saying, and they don't understand what I'm saying. So that creates a whole other level of miscommunication. And I think that might happen in the classroom also with children that are dealing with language issues and are not able to communicate perfectly in English. So, I mean, one of the things that I would like to say, and I think many of them have mentioned, I mean, to use some type of coalition and human resources so that all of us can help people in need and try to make, I mean, to make things a little bit better under the current circumstances. So I think, I mean, the immigrant community has been very good in organizing itself. They don't have the resources that many citizens have, as you know. So they themselves are trying to fight the crisis and helping each other, distributing food. And I think today I'm just starting to think that it would be great to create also sources in which we distribute high school supplies and books for the immigrant community. On the positive side of all of this, I think that I have discovered the power of the gaze, the power of the eyes of students, how I'm communicating with them in a different way. And and the students, I mean, at least at the college level, are eager to have some type of human contact. They are the generation of technology, but they are very much present in the classroom and are eager to communicate with professors or classmates. Again, you know, I'm one of the privileged ones, and I'm just hoping that I use this privilege to help other people in need. And any ideas that you have, I'll be more than glad to welcome them. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Margarita. It was very important. Your perspective was very important. You're the only person who spoke who's a professor at a private school. And it's also very important. I know how hard you've worked with La Colmena and the immigrant community. It was wonderful to have an insight into how they're doing and how we can help them. Thank you. We're going to have Guillermo Grau speak now. He's from UAU. It was an organization that was in my school before I retired, and they provided wonderful services to the students in my school. It was very important. They provided after school care. They have provided other services, and it was very important. And I know that Tatiana Argulo, who's also on our Peace Action Board, she shared the fight that she led to get school funding for student youth employment during the summer. And by uniting with other organizations, they did a wonderful job to restore some of that funding. So Guillermo, you're up.
Thank you. Deborah, I appreciate it. First off, I want to echo Professor Sanchez's statement about privilege and just share that I feel privileged to be to speak this afternoon. I think this is a great opportunity to really discuss a lot of the issues that our students, our families, and our communities of color are going to face and are facing right now at the start of this new academic year. Needless to say, just as the other speakers have highlighted, this pandemic has certainly spotlighted and only exacerbated the challenges and inequities that are faced by our students and our families and communities of color. The rollout of this academic year is I think a microcosm of this nation's focus on capitalizing on this pandemic and demonstrative of how public education is not valued. Instead of focusing on this year's plans on both remote and in-person schooling, we've wasted time, funds, and energy on reopening restaurants and nail salons, bars, and gyms. And this is a certainly a time where we really need to focus on the needs of our families and communities. This pandemic has only served to further isolate individuals, create greater levels of anxiety and depression, and I think as I was listening to some of the other speakers, I think it's so important that we work collaboratively in responding to all of these different challenges. Ms. Rasan Robinson, I think, put it great when she talked about needing to have parents, students, and teachers really create solidarity in response to our current circumstances, that need to have a collective voice that will provide students and families and even educators the opportunity to really be part of the planning and execution of our education system is incredibly important. I think holding our school administrators, our elected officials accountable is more important than ever. I should have started with this, and I apologize, as I was just excited to share my thoughts. I am with United Activities Unlimited, and I am the director of community initiatives. United Activities is a social service agency that primarily focuses on youth development and youth workforce development. And in my particular role, I oversee 6 community centers. 2 of them are school-based community centers, one at PS 18, where Ms. Naila Bourne works at, and one at Midland Beach at IS2. In addition to that, I also oversee 4 NYCHA-based community centers, one located in Mariners Harbor, the other in West Brighton, one in South Beach, and the last one being the Berry Homes. And these centers provide, or they're part of a network of after-school and community centers across New York City, funded by the Department of Youth and Community Development. And these centers, as well as their after-school counterparts that are programs that are just provide after-school programming, provide comprehensive programming that spans areas of academic enrichment, civic engagement and community building, college and career exploration, physical health and recreation, life skills, as well as arts and culture. And thankfully, I do and would like to share that through extensive and consistent advocacy back in the spring, the city did commit to refunding a lot of these community-based programs throughout the city, and we are really working to collaborate as extensively as possible with the DOE and with other community-based organizations to really provide wraparound services for our students and our families, as their challenges have only been exacerbated. In addition to that, we are also partaking in a new initiative from the Department of Education that's known as the Learning Bridges. The Learning Bridges is an initiative meant to serve 3-year-olds to high schoolers that will provide programming and support for remote learning for those students and families who choose blended learning. The program will serve students on days in which they do not attend school in person, so as to, one, provide necessary childcare for families, but secondly, to provide them additional support with remote learning. And while that is certainly something that I am excited to be a part of, and excited to provide that additional support to students and families, it certainly isn't enough. The response from individuals like those on this in this forum is vital in being able to really ensure that we are holding our our elected officials, our school administrators accountable for ensuring a more equitable educational experience for our students. And we really do need to leverage the resources that we have, call for accountability, ensure that we have coalitions in which we are bringing together different stakeholders, and of course, I'd be remiss to not also say that we really need to change the narrative as it pertains to ensuring that our communities of color are being counted, and ensuring that we are encouraging communities to participate in our census, in voting, and ensuring that that we provide them those venues and those resources to do so. I look forward to any questions that that people may have, and I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Okay, I guess we're having questions.
Is Tal Jasmine here? No, right?
No.
No, okay. So I guess that's our speakers, and I want to thank them. They gave us a lot to think about, from discussing how capitalism is related to the past, the history of education in New York City in terms of racism and underfunding, to their individual perspectives as parents, as providers of services to students, and as teachers. And we've got a number of questions, and I'm going to allow to have people who presented the questions ask the presenters, right? So the first one will be,
No, so Sally or I will get it.
okay.
Thea John Kerry.
Thea John Kerry, would you like to ask her questions? What do we do?
Hi. So I had a couple of questions, but like most of them all evolve around the equity for our children's education. So being a parent of a child who's in high school, being a teacher for middle school, and knowing what I'm expected to do or try to do. And I have a very great concern in terms of that. We've cut back on the standards that are expected to be covered in the classroom. So, which in some ways is good, but the continuum of the standards, I am fearful of my child and other students losing out on their education. And how can we, and how is this going to be addressed? And how can we help prevent this loss of education that our children are going to essentially have?
Would someone like to respond to that? One of the panelists? Or no? I think it's kind of a broad question.
I'll attempt to answer it. Thea, you know, I'm a parent as well, and a teacher just like you. And I think that when it comes to ensuring that our students aren't going to fall behind, I think moving away from thinking about it as, you know, reaching the standards that have been set by the DOE or the educational boards, and thinking about what our students are really going to need to know in order to help us create the society that we need. And so I think that it is possible for teachers to push teachers, especially being part of PTAs and SLTs, to push teachers to find ways to make those standards that students need to know, the things that we need students to know, the math, the science, the language, all of those things more relevant to what's going on for today. And I think it's possible, you know, and I think we also have to stretch what we see as good education. You know, I think that a student can learn a lot more about history attending one rally than they do all year in a class. And so it's not just what we see as typical standards, but what you know, pushing our teachers to think about what is really valuable. I hope that was an answer.
I wouldn't mind answering. This is Tammy. I think that it's going to be a long time, and it's going to be a long time before we get to that point where teachers and parents and students are all on the same page. And not without hard, real, transparent work. And I think that is the biggest problem that is inhibiting us from actually making a difference. I went to a predominantly white school all my life until I transferred to Howard University. And the difference between the two was tremendous. I was lucky and I was fortunate enough to go to one of the top high schools in the nation that's still on the top 100 list, public high schools. But I have to tell you, my experience at Howard was a lot different because I felt that the professors were invested in me, not just with me just learning my ABCs and 1, 2, 3s, because I'm gonna be honest with you, I did not learn how to write until I went to Howard. And I went to Ithaca College first, and I'm surprised I even got through high school after I went to Howard. I didn't know how to really write. I knew it, but I kind of just skated through. I think that there needs to be an overhaul in investing in our children. And it's not the children that, that need to do that. It is the adults. And there's so much finger pointing at everyone that the only people that are missing out are the children, because no one wants to take responsibility of investing into our kids. And it's really more difficult when you don't invest into children that are not like you, that come from a different background than you, and come from a different cultural standpoint. And I think that until we all, and I said this before, and I'm very clear about this, until we all really decide that this is who we want to invest in, it is not going to work. And call me pessimistic, but I've seen the difference between how in white environments where there's all white students and all white teachers, how the interaction between the two is very different than when you're in all white environments in terms of the staff and all Black students. It is a huge difference. And it took me a while to get used to it in New York City, because I'm expecting my daughter and my son to have the experience I had in high school and elementary school, where it was more like Staten Island Academy. But when I came here and I saw just the disconnect and the distrust and the rhetoric and just the finger pointing, and no one ever wants to come together regarding the kids. And until that changes, and that is something internal, that has nothing to do with education or instruction. That is an internal, emotional, and mental state that we have to come to terms with. And it is going to be difficult. I'm not trying to be pessimistic. I am really trying to make this real. And we talk about it all the time. And I think Kelly Villar is on here, who's part of the Equity Alliance of Staten Island. We've been working at this for 3 years, I think, Kelly, and we still have so much more to do, and we've only touched the surface. It is going to take a lot more than just talking about it. It's going to take people really being real about who they are and what they believe.
Um,
I'd like to say something, Debbie.
yeah.
I mean, I think also as teachers and professors, I think that we sometimes are obsessed about covering lessons. It's a great opportunity to stop and reflect, and we need to pause and to be flexible and allow ourselves to reflect on what is going on and to reflect on the inequalities that are going on, because in one classroom you do have all type of students. So I think it's important not to be obsessed about education just as a lesson. As Rashad said, education can be also a protest or something that you do outside of the classroom.
Thank you, Margarita. Let's see, JC Robinson, did you want to ask a question? Jazzy.
Sorry for
It's okay. Is she here?
and maybe she's not here anymore.
Okay.
Yeah, she's here.
She's here?
I don't know. She says she's here. No, skip next one.
Okay. Does Neil Frumkin, do you want to ask a question?
Yeah, thank you. I was just intrigued by the work that's going on at the Park Slope High School, and maybe perhaps there could be some more discussion of how that unity is being built. What are the concrete steps that have gone on? This year, last year, the year before, because these things don't just happen. Thank you.
Do you want to respond to that, Rasan?
So we started essentially by getting people, oops, am I here? Okay.
Yeah.
We started by getting like-minded people together. And so as my fellow forum participant said earlier, like it wasn't easy and it's not built in a day. But if you go into any school, you're going to find adults that are pro-student genuinely. And you start with those people. And then you think about, you think and talk about what is best for the students. And so the first thing we did was we said that students were primary. So no matter how many times we thought we were under attack, we agreed that without fighting for students, nothing was going to be accomplished. And then we called parents. We in our school, we're broken up into circles. It's like an advisory. And so I have 12 students every year that are like all the students are my students, but 12 of them particularly I get to know. And when we were going remote, we sat down in different rooms, in different classrooms and offices, and we called every single one of our parents, and we asked them what they needed. We asked them how we can help. We stopped by if they needed something and gave it to them. And so it started out by finding people in the school that were genuinely pro-student and like-minded. And then we went to our parents, and then we it's long, and it's a long process, but we wanted to build that parent-student-teacher alliance through struggle. And so things kept happening to our students. We're in the middle of Park Slope, Brooklyn, which I don't know if you guys are familiar with, but it's very wealthy. And so when the school day ended and mostly Black and Latin students were outside of the building, they had NYPD there show up and us try to literally shoo our students to the train station. And so we got those like-minded teachers together, and we started hanging out in front of the building with our students. And so when NYPD came and we say, no, they're with us. They belong here. This building has been here for 100 years, and they belong just right here. And then we turned that into a community forum where we invited the neighborhood to come in and hear our students' stories. And other things kept happening. There was a pizza shop across the street from us who had a sign up that said that they didn't want students in their pizza shop during school hours, right? And one of our parents noticed that students from the local Catholic school were welcome there. And so we had a rally in front of it, right, with like-minded parents, like-minded teachers in the building. So you find your tribe, for lack of a better word, and you grow that, and you bring in parents, and you bring in students.
Okay, Jay-Z?
Jazzy.
Jazzy, I'm sorry, I
It's all right.
apologize.
It's okay.
Jazzy, did you want to speak now?
Yes, I do. First and foremost, thank you so much to Peace Action for creating this panel. Thank you to the panelists for speaking and bringing so much knowledge and information. Basically, I just have a comment to make is that, you know, during COVID, it exposed a lot of the racial disparities that we have in our systems, especially in education. But I'm greatly disappointed in the fact that there was a teacher in New Dorp that made racist comments. And from what I understand and what I know, the matter is still being investigated. Why? And I also feel that, especially here in Staten Island, that our Black and our brown and our working class children are not getting what they richly and so rightly deserve. And I feel that that is, you know, basically a shame and a travesty. And also too, in the fact that, you know, our public schools still have not received the funding that they deserve on a state level. There was a lawsuit, parents and educators won. Why is Cuomo holding this money? What is the reason? And it's not fair to our children, and especially in our Black and brown and our working class families. It's not fair to them. But thank you so much for having this panel. That's what I have to say. And thank you so much for giving me an opportunity to speak. I'm sorry for earlier. I was trying to unmute. Thank you once again.
Jay, would you like to ask a question or make a comment?
Yeah, this is Jay. This is Jay Arena. I'm a professor also at the College of Staten Island and a rank and file member of the Professional Staff Congress. And I have a comment and question on John Lawrence's, my fellow union member, John Lawrence's comment, but would have some relevance for some of the other speakers. I think John did a good job of analyzing the political, which I would really call the class struggle from above, that we have seen over the last few months with the Democrats and Republicans coming around to bail out Wall Street while giving crumbs to the working class, which they've now cut off. But I think the other part of the class struggle was wanting that he presented. One was there's a contradiction between the bailouts that the Democrats and Republicans have carried out and his call to back Biden in the election. But the other problem with his presentation was part of the struggle, class struggle from below, is an intra-class struggle of deciding what we are going to do. And so in our union, the Professional Staff Congress, there is a fight going on, and that is representative of what's happening around the country, of how do we struggle. And the most important weapon for working class people is the strike, right? In a particular, a mass strike. And in our union, there has been a struggle to mobilize for a real strike, a mass strike that links our struggle with the broader working class, what Tammy brought up about coming together for the kids. And so in our union, in our chapter here on Staten Island, a rank and file group presented a fight back to say, we need to make the rich pay. The only way we're going to solve the crisis at CUNY, at Wagner College, at the public schools, and all the attacks we're facing is to take back the trillions that they have stolen from us. And so we are calling for a strike for demanding a wealth tax on the wealthiest 1% of New York to pay for a jobs and free public services program for all, open for all, immigrants, the formerly incarcerated. So that would be to address the crisis we face at CUNY, but also the broader crisis that the entire working class faces. And we're gonna need them in our fight I'll close up here, in order to win. And so that is the struggle going on. And I think John has been on the other side of that. And so the union leadership and others have vehemently opposed that, right? And so that is where we're at. We've got to fight the ruling class, but there's a fight within our unions, within our mass organizations about how we prosecute and move forward. And I see the only way and we have seen some victories with the New York City schools. The only reason de Blasio backed off and his superintendent is because there was a threat of a strike. And that's a first step. But to get what we really need, we're going to have to build for a mass strike, and one that isn't just CUNY faculty, but one that takes in our students and the broader working class. And to do that, we have to raise common demands that address our problems and the broader working class. And just one last point. It is a racist attack what's going on at CUNY, but we also have to remember the ruling class has become very clever. And so they have increasingly integrated the ruling elite. And so at CUNY, we are going up, not just against Cuomo, but William Thompson is an African-American private equity banker that runs CUNY. He's head of the CUNY board. He is ramming this through. Roberto Mujica, who is Cuomo's top budget hatchet man, who is also on the board, is also ramming these austerity measures through. So we also have to keep that in mind in developing our fight back. I'll end there.
Okay.
I just want to, there was one more question from.
No, John is going to answer it.
Oh, John is going to answer it? Okay.
Well, I mean, I largely agree with a lot of what Jay says. And the internal debate in the PSC is a longer story, and we would have to talk about that. Basically, I agree we need to organize at a much larger scale, and there needs to be progressive unity, and we need to consider all tactics, including the general strike. However, I think it's going to take just a lot of organization, and it's going to have to take an organization of institutions that are already formed and that have been forming over the last number of years, political institutions that are, people coming together like Our Revolution and the Democratic Socialist America, and my critique of the group in the PSC that's been organizing is that they really don't lay out any logistical plan towards getting towards a general strike. It's mostly a rhetorical call. And so that's my big issue, is that there's no logistical planning, and unless no realistic way to win a big strike, or even to organize along the unity needed, because beyond the call, there's no plan and little organizing, from my opinion.
Selena Gray had some questions about busing, and I had done some research about that, and I just want to say that it was very upsetting because from what I had read a few days ago, there was no final plan for District 75, and there's no final plan for busing for students, which is a big issue on Staten Island, and no final plan for having matrons or paraprofessionals on the bus. So Selena, did you want to say anything else about that?
Yeah, it's being a caregiver of a child with special needs, and everyone on this call had so much to add to the topics that we're addressing, but there is really an attack on children with special needs, especially when it comes to children with needs in Black and brown communities. I signed onto a letter yesterday where New York State is proposing that impartial hearing officers don't need to be lawyers. And that will really set people of color that use that impartial hearing process, it would set us back because a lot of people in our community don't understand the law. They don't understand what's at stake when they go in front of these impartial hearing officers. So there's a lot of different elements of education that are going to go away or is going to disproportionately affect our communities. And I just want this group and other groups to be mindful of the special needs community because there is a really, really big issue with busing, with the impartial hearing process. There are things that I don't think a lot of us are paying attention to. So I just want to make everyone aware to please pay attention to the children with IEPs that are in our communities and how they will be affected probably. You know, I'm not sending my grandson back to school because of the busing issue. I just don't know what's in place right now. So I just wanted to advocate for them as well.
Yeah, it's very scary. And as a special ed teacher, I always advocated for my students, and the administration tries to divide you from the parents by making you afraid that the parents are not on your side. They're going to hire advocates. They're going to rake you over the coals, when in fact, the parents are the ones that have the same concern that you have for your students, and they are your allies, not the administration. And it's important for teachers to realize that. So let's see. Is Kathy, did you want to say something? And Mike Dola, did you want to say something?
Oh, yeah, I actually was late to this, so I'm not sure if Ms. Robinson, are you a teacher at the School of Journalism?
I know, I'm at Park Slope Collegiate. I'm on the 4th floor.
Okay, okay.
But I know what you're talking about. Yes, we were part of that.
Yeah, so I'm not sure, the summit curricula that kids walked out on, might be reiterating stuff, I apologize, but I'm a substitute teacher with DOE, and I remember working there, and if I hadn't worked there that day and somebody told me about what had just happened, this is in 2018, I wouldn't have known about it. And it was so inspiring that the kids were fed up with this online curriculum. They organized themselves, they went out.
Yeah, that's an important point.
And this is stuff that we need to develop and uncover and transmit as educators and parents, because they're at the lead. They have to be at the lead. They're the ones faced with this stuff. And I'd just like to say, I really appreciate it. I came in on, again, late. I appreciated all the speakers, everybody talking, the point about poly prep as a Farrell student and fellow alumni of, some of my best friends, but also Vito Fasella, Pantaleo, that whole, reactionary vanguard of Staten Island. That spoke to me that those resources are there. They're just being hoarded. And just to push back a little bit on John and his interlocutor and fellow union member, I think respectfully the opposite of capitalism isn't social democracy or redistribution, but it's something other than capitalism. So I'm all for struggling with people to get things as much as you can, but we have to talk about the unintended consequences of a wealth tax, the unintended consequences from the point of view of profit, and of a population who educators, I remember Pataki being very candid years ago, and people can correct me, but he said, we really only have the responsibility to educate up to like 5th grade, for argument's sake. It was like incredibly candid and brutal. I'll go, but I just wanted to say that these are populations that are considered surplus, right? That Brenner, that was a cool link. I appreciate that, Mr. Lawrence. But yeah, you know, redistribution is one thing, but getting out of this system entirely and figuring out how to live on a whole different level is something that we need to be talking to our students about, because it's not going to solve the crisis, right? And I don't think that, I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth, but these you know, ways of getting more always develop into new crises. And I am curious to know about the Title I issue. It's the first I've heard about it, but it reminds me of, right, Pruitt-Igoe and NYCHA and all the racist paternalism there. I'm sure that that's going to be an issue, and I'd love to learn more about that. If maybe Ms. Brown wants to talk about that specifically, that would be great, because there's going to be a lot of hand wringing. Are they going to put the money to the right things? That type of stuff, which might have already been talked about. Sorry. Thank you for taking.
I want to talk about it too. I want
Thank
to know
you.
where that money's going. There's schools that get $20,000, $30,000. Some schools get $2 million in Title I funding that they don't even have to apply for. They just get it because they have a certain amount. I'm sorry, they have a certain amount of. They just get the money because they have a certain amount of poverty. And Staten Island is different from the other boroughs. If your school has 60% of your population living under the poverty level, the entire school gets funded from Title I. So you're talking about Curtis High School, where my daughter went. It was 75% of the student body had was living under the poverty level. They got like $1.2 million a year to help make sure that these kids were getting the proper tools and resources in order to just get to standards in New York State. So now they're not in the classroom anymore. So the 1%, the 1 to 5% that they use, that they give to parents to help parents, that's all very critical to help the parents, but what can they do with that $1.2 million? And I'm not just talking about Curtis, there's other schools that get more money. What can they do with that $2 million or $500,000 to ensure that these kids who don't have the resources are getting the support at home? That is no one has talked about that issue. And that money is guaranteed. And it doesn't roll over to the next year, although this year they are allowing it to roll over due to COVID, but it doesn't roll over to the next year. You have to spend it before the end of the fiscal year. So, you know, there's so much that I would like to know what they're doing. I don't even know if this is in the jurisdiction of the DOE in New York City. This is probably a state issue that has to be addressed. But those are critical issues. And that money goes to ELL students, students living in poverty, students that are in foster care, students that are homeless, and students with IEPs. So we're talking about the most vulnerable kids in the most vulnerable households, where this money can actually go to something else because it's not happening in school. Something to think about and something to really discuss further. But that's where you need parents to be involved in these conversations. Parents who are not just taking care of their kids, who have a working knowledge. And a lot of times the schools don't want to tell the parents about this. And just like Selena Gray said, you know, we're forgetting about the most vulnerable out of all of this. And, you know, that is something that really, really needs to be discussed. Like I said, I do know that they rolled over Title I. So if they had $1.2 million from last year, just say they used $2 million from last year, they used three-quarters of it. That means that one quarter, that $250,000 is rolled over to this year, in addition to another $2 million they may have. The larger the school, the more money they get, and the more money they get with, you know, according to the number of poverty. Now there's also targeted Title I, and those are specifically for the students that I just mentioned. So there's money out there to help them remotely. They're just using it inappropriately.
Can I make a comment to answer Mike?
Okay.
A couple things. I forgot to, in regards to voting for Biden, and basically we get to choose who our enemy is going to be for the next 4 years. And I think that there's a lot more likelihood that we're going to get some of the things we want if Biden's president, and not Trump. If Trump's president, we're going to be fighting a defensive battle against authoritarianism and racism. And it's not impossible that we could lose that battle. So that's why I advocate for voting for Biden. And then after that, in regards to working towards socialism, make some good points. I think the devil is in the details, and a lot of times the people on the left say, "Oh, we need socialism," but they don't discuss what that means, and we need to be able to describe to people what that means and how we're going to get it. And I think that if we instituted a serious Green New Deal, which would include massive support for education and healthcare, we could start to build the institutions that could be the basis for a real socialism. So I think it's possible to move in that direction, and I'd love to be in a forum in which we could discuss the details of what socialism is and how we get there. I'm a clinical psychologist, and I've worked with people that have been in very abusive situations, and people choose not to leave abusive situations unless they understand the road out, unless they can see like the possibility of escaping. And I think it's our duty on the left to kind of lay that out and not just have vague calls for socialism or revolution without explaining it in detail, with some detail that makes it seem possible that we can get there.
Okay. Let's see. Kelly Villar, are you from Equity Alliance? Would you like to ask a question or say something?
Sure, I wasn't planning on doing that, but I just wanted to point out that teachers themselves and the unions have the most influence over teachers themselves. And whatever we can do to put in place things that are going to fight off racism in the classroom, especially here on Staten Island, because this is not necessarily a problem in Manhattan. In Manhattan, teachers don't show up with, pro NYPD t-shirts the day after Eric Garner's case is dismissed, whatever it was in court. This happens on Staten Island so in your face, and I know that there have been students, especially during the time when there were borders being closed and people were being shut out of the United States, and they were ICE was very, very, well, still is, but was in the beginning very, very active, where immigrant children here on Staten Island were being harassed by their own teachers. So it is a big, big problem here on Staten Island for us to address the fact that the people have the most influence over teachers in DOE on Staten Island are teachers in DOE and the union that exists here on the union membership that exists here on Staten Island. And that we need to not only, I know that parents have to be involved. I know that the voice of parents have to be a part of this. Of course they do. But your damn peers need to be a part of this. I appreciate all the teachers that are having this conversation with us today and are leading this forum. I very much appreciate that. But what I want to know is how do we influence the teachers that are not on this call, that would never be interested in on this call, and who have no interest in educating young people of color on Staten Island. To me, that is the most urgent and important thing that we must do, is we must fight against that. There are too many young people. The numbers on Staten Island are so disproportionate against people of color. You would think that we were from some other, place in the world.
What?
And it is pretty, damning that children who are children of color on this island have, 30%, the last time I read, 30% of them, third graders can't read on the North Shore. And meanwhile, our entire district as a whole is being praised by DOE as being this great district that has a lot of people, passing math and ELA. So there is a problem. And I just want to kind of hopefully change the conversation a little bit on how do we affect our peers, those people who we know work in DOE, like that new door assistant principal. How do we influence those people? Because that is what is killing the quality of education for children of color on Staten Island.
Okay,
I could say something.
Should I let others speak? Anyone?
Yeah.
Ira, you want to say something?
Yeah, I think we should have petition campaigns to fire egregious racists within the schools, and take it to the union as well, and raise it in the union. That we have to make this a multi-faceted fight. You cannot fight it just as outsiders. You cannot fight it just on the basis of your color. It has to be done within the labor organization as well. And I think also Mr. Lawrence is deluded if he doesn't know that the attack on public education in recent times started under the neoliberals in the Obama-Biden administration, when they went after public education with charter schools. So stop the bullshit, John.
Okay. Well, that's a point of view.
I agree with him that Obama is a neoliberal and that Biden is a neoliberal. I was just saying that right now we're faced with a choice between a neoliberal and a neo-fascist, and I think that it's better for us to go with the neoliberal. That even if you look back with FDR, he was not progressive when he came into office, but he was pushable. And so I think basically Biden's more pushable than Trump is.
Okay. Pat Keaton, did you want to say something? Pat Keaton?
Hi. Yes, this has been a great discussion, and I'm a grandparent. I have a grandson in the public schools and at Ella Baker School. And I know that the parents have been involved in a lot of conversations on the equity committee about how to make sure that there's not disparities in the experience that kids have. And I've also been involved myself in some of the campaigns around defund the police. And I am always looking for ways that we can try to create more links with parents and teachers and students around issues where we have common interest. And we've been doing a lot of research about where the money that goes to fund the police comes from and how it could be reallocated. And so one of the things that's come up is around this whole issue of cops in the schools, which always, contributes to criminalizing students, and maybe during COVID will even more so do that. If a kid's not wearing a mask, maybe they're going to get, treated poorly. So I just wonder if what schools or how this kind of a campaign of sort of linking what it is that society needs and what we need in our schools, and where money doesn't need to go. And as I said in the chat, I don't think that we're going to defund the police under capitalism, but I do think that after this election and before, that the bigger the mass movement we build and pressure from below is going to create the only way of creating possibilities for a more radical solution. And so I just wondered if there are teachers or people or schools here or organizations that are involved in organizing this that would be, could share information or be interested in linking these campaigns.
Thank you. Sinefru?
No, yes, who wants to answer the question?
Oh. Would you like, we're gonna go into, no. Sinefru, would you want to say something or ask a question?
Oh yeah, I wanted to ask a question. I didn't want to. I was actually just going to wait until so her question was answered, and then I can ask my question unless anyone.
Does anybody want to answer her question? Pat's question? No. Okay. You want to say something?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I put it in the chat. I was just saying that I'm a MTA worker. My wife is a preschool teacher. Transit is looking to lay off 9,000, close to 9,000 workers. My wife can't, well, we don't feel comfortable with her returning to preschool in person because we just had a newborn. And they're not offering her to come in and to do online learning. So it's so, and a lot of teachers are not comfortable coming into work. Some are. It's a real struggle. I mean, a lot of teachers and students, parents. I mean, had a lot of different conditions, and a lot of them are not being considered. The working class is always faced with lose-lose situations, and we have to. I think that we can. I think that we. Someone said something before about saving these schools, and I was just saying how like a lot of the cuts to my job and to New York City workers. I mean, and the way that students are treated, and the DOE is all connected, and it is all part of how this system takes advantage of poor working class people, and they use racism to do it. And I think that we need to understand that. And I think most of you here do understand that. I think that knowing that, what is the solution? How we get down to the solution? I mean, I don't think voting has never been an option after all these years through Obama, Bush. I mean, none of the, I mean, Trump now. I mean, different faces, different dictators. We need something better, right? I think that we all can agree on that. I think that we need to fight for a better system. So I think that we need to talk about getting at the root of this oppression that we are under, these attacks, and because if we're not talking about the root and how are we going to break away from the root that is driving us all into further poverty, into further racist attacks, then what are we doing? I think that we need to unite workers, students, teachers, parents. We need to stay together, and we need to organize together to fight for a movement to end a lot of this brutality that a lot of us are facing. I wanted to know what some of y'all think about that, and how do you think we can fight this system of capitalism that I believe is at the root of all these attacks on our class. So what do y'all think?
I think that we've had great, I think that everybody's had an opportunity to speak. We had great speakers. I think that this forum has been very enlightening to me, and a lot of people presented a lot of great information. And I think it's a step forward. And I think that somebody made a good point that this has been a very, I wanted to quote somebody. No, I can't find it. I think it was, sorry. I think it was Thea who said that she thought that the forum was good, but how are we going to continue to stay together, to fight together, to defend the, I'm paraphrasing Thea's words. So how are we going to stay together, to fight together, to support the students of Staten Island, particularly Black and Latin students, to have an equitable education. So I think everybody basically has gotten a chance to speak. So the panelists, again, if they could really give us some insight into that topic so that we continue the fight on Staten Island that around the issues that we discussed today, that would be great. So that would be about 5 minutes. Naila, are you still here? No?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Would you like to respond to that topic or respond to what short, or what you've heard today?
I think like what Rasan and Kelly were saying, and a lot of people in the group were saying, it's about like us getting together. I mean, I think it's not just the teachers, but it's really important for the parents to come together and all of us to come together and really reach out to our parents. Because the union really is the people that are protecting some of the racists that are still in our schools today. And unfortunately, that is their job. But unfortunately, we have the voice to get together and talk to the union and discuss with the union what kind of things we can do that can get some of these people who are not advocating for our children, but still actually making their wealth off of our children to, be ousted out. We need to work together. We need to communicate. We need to, really fight with each other and listen to our parents and work with our parents and recognize that, also the root of all of this is that, our teachers don't even know some of the history of our students and the history of people of color. I have teachers in my school who have said that they didn't know certain things about African American history, which is it's not acceptable. And really getting together with parents to really develop and come up with strategies together to work and can be in constant communication with and understanding the different points of views that people have. Like there are, we have to understand that our parents, and just like we're saying, there's people in poverty. Like I agree, another parent who said that I also work with special education, and it is definitely something that's happening specifically with kids who have IEPs, who are in foster care and things like that. This is happening to them, and there are group that is that needs the most support, and we need to speak up for them as well. And we need to get together with the people who are like-minded, like Rasan was saying, that, you know, we have to be able to get together with like-minded people and constantly communicate and fight for the people who, like you said, what like was said before, they're, you know, they don't know what their rights are. They don't know how to fight for their rights. They don't know what they can do, some parents. So we have to be the ones to speak up for them, and we have to be able to band together and fight against these injustices.
Thank you, Naila. That was wonderful. Okay. Rasan, do you want to say something?
Yeah, Debbie, first of all, it's so cute how proud you are of Naila. You just glow every time you mention her or talk about her. You know, I start for the last 15 years that I've taught, I start every single school year with a lesson around Frederick Douglass's quote, "Without struggle, there can be no progress." And day 2 is a history of Harriet Tubman and John Brown's friendship and multiracial unity. I strongly believe and encourage everyone to realize that that's what we need moving forward, multiracial unity, right? And struggle that involves both parents, teachers, and students. If you're fighting for a better education, if you're fighting for a just system and it doesn't include the people you're fighting for, you need to rethink the groups that you're in, and you need to rethink what you're fighting for. We need student, parent, teacher solidarity.
Thank you. We don't have Yasmin here, so Leonie, you did an excellent presentation. Are you still here? Do you want to say something? She's not here? Okay, she's not here. Too bad. She gave a lot of very good information. Tammy, do you want to sum up what you said and how you response to this, and how we can continue on Staten Island to fight for equitable education?
Well, I'm going to go back to what I said before. It's all about the student. I just came from Rochester, New York, which is where I was born and raised. And I was there for the protest. And I was there for the protest thinking it was one thing, but it turned out to be something completely different. I had no idea that there was going to be bullets, rubber bullets, and sonic weapons, as well as, the barricades and so on and so forth. I think the most interesting thing that I saw was, even though we see it in New York, Rochester's a much more conservative town than New York City. But what I did see, and what really pleased me the most, was the number of kids that were there. And I call them kids because they were young enough to be my own kids, who were white, who were out there working with the Black Lives Matter movement, and who really got it. And having these personal conversations with some of these young white advocates was life-changing for me, because they got it. They saw what some people my own age, and 50-somethings, some of them, don't get, that it is not going to work until all people, white, Black, and those are green, purple, and yellow, and those people who are in power really, truly deal with the facts and deal with the issues, opposed to dealing with their emotions about it. And if you take the emotionality out of it, we would probably get a lot further, because we would look at the black and white of it. What are we doing to really help our kids to succeed? Not what we think about them, what we have to do to succeed. We have children. Most of us on this call have children. All of our children, if you have more than one, they have different personalities. You cannot use that as an excuse not to do your best for your child. And it's the same thing with our Black and brown students. There has to be a shift in thinking. And one pastor told me a long time ago, you can't change people's hearts. That is going to be the issue right then and there. And it's not going to be up to Black parents to partner with a staff of teachers who are predominantly white to do this. It is going to have to be their own talking to them. I think that's where we start.
Okay, Guillermo, did you leave already?
He left.
Oh, okay. Naila, did you want to say something? No? Okay, let's see. John Lawrence, did you want to sum up what your response to this
Sure.
forum was?
Great. Well, I mean, as far as getting involved on Staten Island, there's a lot of good progressive groups, and there's a number of alliances that have formed recently. So maybe Sally can summarize what the name of those alliances, and I encourage people to get involved and organize locally. And as far as as far as organizing to save education, hopefully if Biden gets elected, it's going to move very quickly, the next stimulus package. So if Trump gets elected, we know there won't be a stimulus package, and there'll be mass disinvestment from education, and lots more people are going to get laid off. If Biden gets elected, we have to hit the streets the day after he's elected, put a lot of pressure on him, and try to make demands about what we want in that stimulus package. And it's that's going to help us coming together, lots of groups together, and figuring out better ways to organize and to democratically decide what we want is going to be a big part about whether we can get it or not. So that's our huge task in the next 6 months.
Okay. Thank you, John. I think Guillermo left, so Margarita, did you want to say something?
No, I just want to thank you. I just want to thank you all for this opportunity. I mean, as part of a private college, whether I like it or not, it's the only opportunity I had. So that's the job that I have right now. But being exposed to all of these voices just gave me a lot of good ideas about what to include in my classes and who to invite to my classes, because the advantage of these Zoom and online classes is that you can invite relatively cheap some speakers to come and influence your students, and that's what I'm going to do. Thank you. Thank you all.
Okay. I just said I want to thank everybody who participated. Am I mute? Okay, I'm not that good with technology either. I have Sally and Dave, so as my backup team. So I just want to say that I just want to thank everybody for participating today, and I hope that everybody is greatly concerned about this issue, and I hope that that this gave them an opportunity to express their feelings. And I hope that if anybody at this point has any suggestions about proposing strategies to support parents, students, teachers on Staten Island to fight racist inequality, maybe they would like to say something. Okay. Okay. These are, today we were very lucky. We had a lot of co-hosts. So there are a lot of organizations on Staten Island that are very concerned about these issues. And are you showing them?
Yeah, it's on your screen.
Oh, it's on my screen. Everybody's seeing this, right? So I think, I think that we should try to stay in touch. And if there are struggles that we can all be involved in, I'm a retired teacher. I would love to support other teachers who are still working. If there's anything I could do, that would be great. I try to help other organizations if they have issues. And I hope that we can go forward from this. Does anybody else want to say anything?
How about another meeting, maybe in a month or so?
Okay, that would be great. Would you like to have another meeting? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so maybe in another meeting, another month, we can have another discussion of this. And I hope that maybe there are teachers on Staten Island, rank and file teachers who would like our support. Maybe there are parents organizations that would like our support. Maybe there are other immigrant organizations that would like our support. And I think that we have the registration. We have a copy of the registration from this meeting. And if people would like that, we could use that as a contact list and touch base and have another meeting next time, in a month from now. How do other people feel about that? Okay. And Selena Gray made a good suggestion. She said, in a month, school's going to be open. We can revisit this. A lot of people really liked it. And other people said that they're open to being contacted for another meeting next month. And how do people feel about that?
That's a yes.
Yes? Okay. All right. So I'll keep the registration form and we can revisit this topic again. Thank you, Naila, for the thumbs up.